Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, November 30th, 2020, and today we're going to be talking about the 2020 election results again, and talk about how Donald Trump was just 1% away from being reelected. So looking at our electoral map, a lot of the states voted very similarly as to how they voted back in 2016. 5 states and 1 congressional district flipped to Joe Biden, but generally the rest of the map, the 45 states, including the District of Columbia, and Maine's 2nd Congressional District all voted the same way. So I'm going to use solid colors for right now just to show you the states that voted for Donald Trump in this election and talk about how close it actually was. Many people were expecting, including myself, Joe Biden to do very well. And while he did do well, it wasn't what we were expecting. Democrats did very poorly down ballot, and unfortunately for them, they need to look to the future as to how they can actually perform even better in midterm elections, in Senate elections, and a number of elections, special elections, runoff elections, like the one coming up in the state of Georgia for 2 Senate seats. So Democrats do need to take a look at this election, and while at face value was a success, wasn't exactly what they wanted to happen. So looking at this map, let's go ahead and characterize all of the states that were decided by less than 5%. That includes Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, and I believe that may be it. So that leaves 123 toss-up electoral votes, and overall, the results weren't exactly too solid for President-elect Biden, nor were they too solid for President Trump. Here's the actual election results if you want to see it here. And looking at some of these margins, they were exceptionally close. Georgia was decided by less than a percentage point. Arizona was decided by less than a percentage point. Wisconsin was as well. Wisconsin was actually the tipping point state, and if you don't know what that means, essentially, it means that this state negates every state after it, meaning this state is the state that put Joe Biden over the top. Every other Democratic state and district after Wisconsin, if it does vote for Biden, it really wasn't needed because Wisconsin put him over the top. So essentially, this was the largest margin of victory for this state that put Biden over the top, and it actually was just less than 1%. Donald Trump won Florida more than Biden won Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. If you're looking at the Michigan margin, it's +3. Take a look at the actual results. It was 2.8%. Looking at the state of Pennsylvania, it was 1.2%. Take a look at Wisconsin. It was 0.6%. So when you're looking at the results here, and you look at Florida, which was a 3.4% margin, I believe. Let's go ahead and see right here. 3.3% margin for Donald Trump. Florida went more to Trump than Biden's victory in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and actually, surprisingly, Nevada. So when you're looking at the Rust Belt, sure, Biden could have won here. If there was a 1% difference, Biden would be, I'm actually going to adjust this map based off a 1% difference in these swing states, Biden would have lost the election. Michigan would have still been lean. Pennsylvania would have moved down to likely. North Carolina would have remained lean. Georgia would have moved over into the Trump column. Arizona would have moved over into the Trump column. Nevada would have been still lean. And Wisconsin would have gone to Donald Trump by a narrow margin. Now, I think that's pretty surprising. Looking at these results, looking at the presidential election, we were 1% away from Donald Trump winning the presidency. And I know you're looking at the map and you're thinking, how does this end up with a Donald Trump victory? Well, first things first, he flipped Georgia back. He flipped Arizona back. So combined, that's what, 35 electoral votes, 31, not 31, I can't do addition today, 27 electoral votes. You look at the Rust Belt, and you see that Pennsylvania and Michigan are still blue. And overall, Biden's numbers are 269. But looking at the Democratic parties, not so great down ballot effect, not so great down ballot results. It is very possible that this incoming House of Representatives votes for Donald Trump in that scenario. And I can't find a more 2020 way to end this presidential election by entering into the United States House of Representatives to decide our president and the United States Senate to decide who our vice president would be. Because it looks as if the Democratic Party is going to lose seats in the House of Representatives. I mean, they've already lost seats. It's already been declared so. We can actually take a look at the House map here. And the way that the House of Representatives works in terms of voting for the president, it is not by each individual congressional district. Every single state is resorted to one vote, which means that states with majority Republican representatives and majority Democratic representatives, they will all vote together, and that one state will have a singular vote based off of that state's delegation vote. So Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, all states with 3 electoral votes, meaning they have 1 House district, which means 1 House representative. All 4 of those people will be equal to, the voters in Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona. Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, majority Democrats. These areas very well could go blue and vote for the Democratic Party. But just because California has 52 more House seats than North Dakota, they're weighed equally. So this actually puts a lot more power in some of these smaller states and a lot more power now in the Republican Party if this was the actual scenario. Because we saw a net gain of 9 seats. They flipped 12 seats. The Republican Party did very well this House election. And while this is the House map that they dominated through the entire 2010s, you also have to realize that this was a year where the Democratic Party should have gained seats. They were expecting to gain seats. And with 7 races remaining, it doesn't look as if the Democratic Party is doing well in many of them. In fact, in all of the races that have not been called, the Republican Party remains the leader. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this House map. If this was the actual election result and we were entering into the House of Representatives, not only would the Republican Party have gained seats, and they do vote with the incoming House of Representatives, but actually it's based off each individual state, and this map is much less favorable to the Democratic Party than it was in 2018. And even in 2018, if we were in this scenario and the map held the exact same the way it voted in 2018, the Republican Party would still be electing Trump because they still had 26 majority House states, and I think that's up to 28 now. So looking at the results, I can't really paint a picture where we were reaching a scenario where it's a tie in which Donald Trump doesn't win the presidency. Now, you would also ask, would there be faithless electors? Well, the Supreme Court actually just ruled recently that states can uphold laws that prohibit their electors from voting differently than their state. Texas actually had 2 Republicans defect from Donald Trump, so he actually received 304 electoral votes in 2016, not 306. Hillary Clinton received 227, not 232 by the time all of the votes were tallied. But now with that recent Supreme Court ruling, states have the ability to pass laws that require electors to vote the same way that their state voted, which means that a number of these states will prohibit these electors from voting differently. And if they have a fuss, if they will not abide by that law, they will be replaced almost immediately. If you remember, in Minnesota in 2016, there was a Bernie Sanders supporter who was practically Bernie or bust, who said he would not vote for Hillary Clinton on this ballot. And as a result, they replaced him immediately. And someone else took his place, and Minnesota voted for Hillary Clinton, all 10 electoral votes. But we are now seeing the Supreme Court pretty much upholding a lot of these laws that say you can't vote differently. And while the argument for the electors being able to vote differently is that they are still citizens, they are still able to vote in the electoral process how they wish, they're saying that the states with laws that prevent electors from voting differently in their popular vote, which actually is a pretty democratic way of looking at it, they are preventing them, and that is a law that is constitutional. Now, they're not saying that every state has to enforce these laws or every state has to have these laws. There are plenty of states that do not have any laws restricting electors other than maybe a fine or them being held in court for whatever reason, but they can still do it. But some of these states will prohibit it. And I can imagine states would have a last-minute convening of their state legislature, maybe in some of these more Republican states where there's Republican supermajorities or a Republican governor. Well, they'll try to prevent something like this happening in the case that there is a Republican who would defect from Donald Trump. And the same would have to go for Joe Biden in some of these more Democratic states. They may be more inclined to actually pass legislation that prevents Democrats, any of these Democratic electors, from moving from Joe Biden, given that the stakes in this scenario, would be extremely high. So a 269 tie would actually end up with the United States Senate, incoming United States Senate, deciding the vice president. And looking at this map, I don't think the Democrats would be too happy with that scenario. I'm not entirely sure if the vice president could actually vote on their election. I don't think that they can. I don't think that would be too democratic, but also this system itself is not a democratic system. Could someone please tell me in the comment section down below? I remember discussing this before, but I don't have it at the top of my head. But looking at the map, the Democratic Party would probably not be too confident in a Kamala Harris selection from the United States Senate, and I don't think they'd be too confident in a Joe Biden selection from the United States House of Representatives. So looking at this map, we were truly 1 percentage point away from a Donald Trump re-election. And that also has to be sort of worrisome to a lot of Democrats that this election was not the blowout that it seems on face value. According to the President of the United States, this election was a landslide for Joe Biden. But according to any other Americans who are looking at the electoral map, realistically, it just wasn't an electoral college landslide. The margin may have seemed large, but there were larger elections in the 2000s. Every Democratic victory since 1992 has been larger than Joe Biden's victory this time. So it's been actually a pretty low bar. He's set a pretty low bar, but I do think that looking at some of these margins, the Democratic Party should be happy with how they performed in Virginia, how they performed in Minnesota, New Hampshire, Maine, Colorado, but also the fact that they were just 1 percentage point away from losing spells out worrying signs for the next election. And I know what you're thinking. That's 4 years away. Why are we worrying about it? Why are we talking about 2024? Well, immediately after Donald Trump's narrow victory in 2016, the Democratic Party knew where they needed to target. They knew exactly what they needed to do 4 years before the election even happened. And what did they do? They targeted Wisconsin. They targeted Michigan. They targeted Pennsylvania in ways that we hadn't seen in the past. And Joe Biden won those states. He flipped back the blue wall. We will not see those states red in this election. And that's because the Democratic Party realized immediately where their faults were and made up for it. It may not have been super large. Democrats were probably expecting a larger victory. Joe Biden received more votes from any presidential candidate in United States history, even more than Obama 2008 and 2012, and Hillary Clinton 2016. And yes, you could say we saw more people in America than we did in 2008 or 2012, but also there was a lot higher turnout everywhere. Every single state saw an increase in turnout. So Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania were very early indicators, were very early states that the Democratic Party acknowledged the day after the election. And they spent the last 4 years trying to flip it, and it paid off on November 3rd, 2020. So looking at this map, the Republican Party could likely be saying the same thing. They were 1 percentage point away from winning the presidency, but they didn't get it because the Democratic Party won in the areas that they really needed to win. And I think that this is probably one of the first type of analysis videos that you maybe are seeing, or that you're going to be hearing soon from Republican pundits, that they were close to winning. And in the next election, they're going to try to get even closer enough to jump over the 270 mark. Because that 1% line was one that I used, that many people used, pundits all around, regardless of political party, used, that 1%, if the 2016 election had changed by just 1% in favor of Hillary Clinton, she would have been the one running for re-election this time, not Donald Trump. But that just wasn't the case. So elections do come down to very close margins. Your vote definitely matters. And with that 1% difference, we could have had an entirely different outcome. And that's just the way the American political system works. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my post 2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.